Are you one of many skilled South Africans without a formal qualification? You have the knowledge and want to further your employment but are met by dead ends. At Cornerstone Institute, we believe that your work and life experience should count for something. We are giving you the chance to reach your highest potential by using the unique skills and abilities you have picked up along your journey. Cornerstone Institute's alternative access routes has you, your experiences, and your skills at heart. If you are a past student looking to return to learning, or if you've gained experience through employment and want to or need to have a tertiary qualification to continue working, your relevant work experience and prior learning can now be assessed and may even count as an exempting part of your qualification. At Cornerstone Institute, we understand that your time is precious and we want to make it possible for you to accelerate your time to graduation wherever possible. Find out what your skills are worth and how they can contribute towards a recognized qualification. Visit www.cornerstone.ac.za for more information.
My name is Kumo Apani. I am a registered counsellor. I've been in practice for 2 years and I'm a graduate of Cornerstone Institute. When I was a child growing up, I didn't specifically know what I wanted to do, but I've always known that it had to do with some kind of care, support work. I just realized that that's something that I'm called for and something that just came naturally for me growing up, so it made sense. I heard about Cornerstone from a friend of mine who actually went to Cornerstone Institute, and I decided to finally go for it and do it, so I enrolled. Funding was always a huge concern of mine. My family didn't have the means to support me, so when I finally heard about the bursaries available at Cornerstone, I applied for it and here we are. If it wasn't for the bursary, I definitely fear I would not have been able to be afforded the opportunity to be educated, to be trained. So I guess without this bursary, you could say I would not have been able to fulfill my childhood dreams. Thank you, Cornerstone.
In this time of great uncertainty, let us help you focus on one of the things you can be certain of: your education. Now is the time to earn your qualification and upskill yourself from the comfort and safety of your own home. We've been educating South Africa for 50 years. That means we're no stranger to a global crisis. We've got this and we've got you. Take control and speak to one of our student advisors. Email info@cornerstone.ac.za and enroll now. You want to further yourself, your career, and have more options in your life. We get it. In order to do this, you need to increase your level of earning. But in order to do that, most of the time, you need to further your education. However, in order to further your education, you need to pay for it. But in order to pay for it, you need to further your education.
However, in order to further your education, you need to pay for it. But in order to pay for it, you need to further your education. However, in order to further your education, you need to pay for it. But in order to pay for it, you need to further your education.
But this cycle can be broken. At Cornerstone, we don't believe that finances should be a barrier to quality education. Speak to one of our advisors today and email info@cornerstone.ac.za now. In this time of great uncertainty, let us help you focus on one of the things you can be certain of: your education. Now is the time to earn your qualification and upskill yourself from the comfort and safety of your own home. We've been educating South Africa for 50 years. That means we're no stranger to a global crisis. We've got this and we've got you. Take control and speak to one of our student advisors. Email info@cornerstone.ac.za and enroll now.
My name's Emily Fosler. I'm the Journal Manager at Cornerstone Institute. We've started the African Journal of Non-Profit Higher Education.
My name is Stephen Langtree. I've been with Cornerstone for just over a year, and I work as the Institutional Advisor on the African Journal on Non-Profit Higher Education.
My name is Jabulani Chitanga. I'm a lecturer in the Psychology Department. I'm also a chair of the Research and Ethics Committee.
So I'm Rudy Buys. I'm the Executive Dean. And I'm now also the editor for the journal, which is an incredible privilege.
The African Journal for Non-Profit Higher Education, or better known as the AJNPHE, aims to advance an African voice in global scholarly discourses on educational theory and practice unique to the sector.
This journal is not only exclusive to Cornerstone, it's open to everyone. It's an international journal, not only for South Africa, so anyone can publish in it. As the Research and Ethics Committee, we welcome each and every student and staff especially, so that we can publish in this journal. Not only staff at Cornerstone, but even from anywhere else.
What I think is significant about the opportunity to contribute to this journal is that Africa, as a continent, as much as South Africa, at this stage really struggles with the question of what knowledge directs higher education. Is it knowledge from all around the world, or is it our own? You might call that the project of decolonization. And very simply put, what that means is that when you're from Africa and you know the issues of Africa, that you write about them. And so what is exciting for me, and I think significant of this journal, is that it will give Africa voice. That is a project in decolonization.
So the contributions we're looking for include sort of original journal articles, and all our journal articles which are original will be double-blind peer-reviewed. And then we also look for book reviews and journal articles or book chapters which have been published previously, which we'll republish in the journal as well.
One of the most important things of such a journal is how you manage the oversight of a journal for quality purposes, for scholarly quality, for publication quality, for participant quality, and so forth. The way we do it is, of course, as per normal, with an editorial board that directs, the themes of the journal. And so we have an internal ethics, research and ethics committee of our Senate that also has oversight. And then, of course, in our editorial team, we only use professionals and specialists in the field. And when you mix those three things, the journal is going to be brilliant. Please write for us.
Well, anyone who wants to contribute to the journal, I would encourage them to make a submission. We do give feedback on an original submission, and because it's peer-reviewed, you'll get valuable feedback. So even if it doesn't get published, I think it will help you for future attempts to get published.
If you have any questions regarding submissions or any other questions, you can contact me via email, journal@cornerstone.ac.za.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Dr. Crystal Janica, the Registrar of Cornerstone. Welcome to our afternoon session, the second day of our Reclaiming Agency. And the discussion topic for today, it's become an active member of your community. It's a workshop, an interactive workshop, and I welcome you to participate from wherever you are in the world. And I trust that you'll have a wonderful, engaging session with us. I hand over to Community Chest.
So good afternoon, everyone. It really gives us a great honor to be here today. Very new for us, but we're going to enjoy the next 90 minutes with you. So my name is Taryn Bauer, and my colleague
Yumna Martin, and we're both from Community Chest, and we look forward to spending this time with you. Looking forward to the engagements and enjoy from the other side as well. Thank you.
So we present the Leadership Academy and Training Institute for Community Chest, and one of a huge focus for us is the upskilling of the NPO sector across our country. And so becoming an active member of your community is something that always comes up. It pops around practically and theoretically, and today we're going to speak about community participation that moves us from a space of impact to influence. So I'm going to use my laptop to guide me. Community participation in its purest form and what it means. Community participation can be loosely defined as the involvement of people in their community in projects, interventions, and causes to solve their own problems. People cannot be forced to participate in projects which affect their lives, but should be given the opportunity where possible. And on that note, I'm going to outline the form of the workshop. So we're going to first start by looking at what is your organization, or who is your organization, and with that we're going to ask you what is the vision for your organization. We then go on and ask the question, so what would happen if we do achieve this vision? And then fundamentally, what would happen if we don't achieve the vision in your community? We then look at the juncture between the two questions, and then we start looking, and that's the interactive part. Thereafter, we'll take you through a talk on some reflections on how can we improve the work that each of us do in our communities, the fundamental work that is moving this poverty needle. How can we do it individually and collectively to obtain your vision. And then we're going to do some reflections, ask some questions about what this demonstrates for us post this workshop. So I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to start by asking you a question, and I'm going to ask my colleague Yumna to hold the mic for me. Can you all see? So I'm going to ask you, what do you see in this picture? And we can just pop it up. Tell me what is it that you see? What do you see? What do you feel? What is happening in this picture?
I see someone running in dirty water.
We see dirty water.
I see an area which looks very underdeveloped, full of litter.
Great.
I see an impoverished community who probably just needs assistance with infrastructure.
Yeah, wasted space, litter, underdevelopment, yes.
Does it look something like your community where you find yourself in?
Yes, that's true. I also see litter.
Litter. Okay, so I'm going to go to another one and we can just pop up again. So what do you see? So I'm going to tell you what I see. I see laundry. You know, what do you see?
I see a cleaned up community.
A cleaned up community. Okay. I also see laundry hanging on an outside structure.
I can tell you from comparing the first picture that there are no children in the streets.
Okay.
I see someone using a public facility rather than their own home to do a personal activity such as your washing.
Mm-hmm. One more?
I see, comparing to the first picture, I see this community is probably just a little bit more established than the first one. So probably like a middle class-ish community.
Okay. So if we were all on the same level in communities, would our washing be hanging in a public space?
Probably not.
Because I'm sure there's underwear hanging here, am I right? It's someone's laundry and it's hanging, so they most likely don't have a space to hang. But we'll continue. What do you see here? There's something fundamentally wrong with this picture. What do you see?
Children in, once again, dirty water. They're in school uniform though.
I like that. Say it again, Shakira.
They are in school uniform. So it looks like, I don't know if they're either on their way to school or if this is at their school grounds.
We have a question here or response.
Okay, I think the children try to cross the river, dirty water as well.
So there's children trying to cross a river. One of the things we see is that they're in school uniform. So for some of us, going to school was either in a taxi, the bus, daddy, mommy dropped me. For some of us on the Cape Flats, we walk. But there's a river between a school and children. There's something fundamentally wrong with this picture. Can we agree? Yes. Okay, so I'm going to go to my last picture. What is wrong with this image? Or what is right about this image? What do you see?
It looks like shacks to me, overpopulated area, yeah?
Is this normal?
It looks like my area.
I want you to respond. Tell me about your area.
I'm from Philippi. I live in this area. It's untidy and children are playing with this sewage.
Anyone else? I like what she said. It looks like my area, my community. So for some of us, this can be very, very normal. It can be very, very normal to stay in a condition like this. It is very close to you. It's on the N2. It's what you see when you come in to Cape Town. It's what you see when you're on the outskirts of Cape Town. That we are in a fundamental crisis because 3 years ago, about 300,000 people in our city alone do not have formal housing, and this exclude backyard dwellers. So we have work to do. And so that's my introduction. You may have a seat, everyone. So I'm going to give over to Yumna Martin, who's going to start asking you or start probing you around these images that you have seen. Are you okay? You still with me? Yes. Wonderful.
And so when we look at that, I mean, those pictures were quite disturbing. And I think one of the big things for me is that it's this reality we see all the time. I see that in my own community. I grew up with that, walking home from school and these puddles all around. You have to and it was fun as a child, but that's not equality. And so we're sitting here as NGOs working in our communities. And my question I want to ask you, so randomly amongst all of you, what's your vision of your organization? So you're all sitting here, you want to achieve this, you want to create some sort of change in a community like that. That's very real to all of us. From your side, if I can just have over there.
So my vision is to create affordable healthcare, possibly free healthcare, to underdeveloped communities.
And that's currently what your vision is in your community that you're working in right now. Great. Okay. And so how are you going to achieve that?
So firstly, we need funding. And from the funding, we will then, build out the necessary plan of action that we need and the framework, as well as the network that we need to reach out into these communities and to understand what actually goes on in these communities. The socioeconomic factors play a major role, micro and macro environmental issues that also affect these individuals, and from there use the research and our analysis to then build out a program where we're able to afford individuals the opportunity to receive affordable or preferably free healthcare.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Thanks for that. Anybody else would like to share with us what's currently happening?
From a young person's perspective, we know that there are serious socioeconomic challenges in our areas. One challenge is drug abuse, teenage pregnancy, and the like. And I think the vision is to clean up our areas, but it's going to require the participation of everybody in the community, specifically our young people. We can't sit and wait for a local government or for someone to come and save us. And so I think it's creating awareness and a partnership in terms of correcting the wrongs in our community.
And so with your organization, is that what you're currently doing?
That is what we're doing. There's still a lot of work to be done, but we've made a start.
But also realizing the importance of your youth and getting them involved in that and kind of doing a lot of awareness work around that and prevention work.
The challenge is ownership and accepting the fact that this is our environment and we are responsible for that. And mobilizing young people is the challenge at the moment, but we'll get there.
Absolutely. I think that's a very valid point that he's saying there. It's around mobilizing and that it's very easy to go into a community and saying, this is our vision, this is what we want to achieve. But if you don't have communities participating and the people that you actually want to create that change with, that's the issue that many organizations sit with, because at what point does the organization let go and say, okay, the community is responsible for this now and you now mobilize on your own?
We're not waiting for a councillor or an MEC to come and save us, but to start an initiative and then ask them to join hands with us here.
Absolutely. Great.
Thank you.
So for me, the vision for my community, and especially now during this COVID time, I've seen a lot of, not even just young people, but like older people also just obviously losing their jobs and not being employed anymore. But right next to me, I have someone who's been in the hairdressing industry for a long time, but she's not wanting to go back to work. So just like starting small businesses at home, mobilizing young people to start, if it's cleaning the streets or whatever that may be, but just to start something small, even if it's like, just start from scratch even. But just to see young people or people in general just start, moving, and if it's cleaning your community, whatever it may be.
And so during this period, we've seen the impact of COVID-19 on all our communities, on our own individual lives, our families that have been impacted. And so it's this, and you say something very important now, it's this, how do we take people out of that mindset around all this negativity and all these negative things that took place, right? How people losing jobs. But how do we now mobilize as individuals to create that change within ourselves, that there are opportunities as well? And so I think across our communities, that's currently what we're all sitting with. There's all these NGOs, there's individuals sitting at home, and how do we also mobilize individuals to take on that? Because she may be starting up her own thing at home and creating income for herself, but it could spiral that two other women get employed there within that own community. And so we engage the active participatory in your community, that you're looking at your community and creating that change. And so, and if it doesn't happen, what happens to that community?
I think that is a mindset change, obviously, because people have just become so accustomed to just, this is what's normal, so we're just going to stay, we're just going to lay in it. If I have to be unemployed, I'm going to have to be unemployed. So I think it's first a mindset shift. And I don't know if that maybe starts with a conversation first. And so maybe it will start with providing a safe space for people to come and just share where they're at. And maybe from that it can move into something bigger. I don't know.
Absolutely, but she's saying something really, really valuable there around, so when does the conversation start? And I always say, we expect things, but we don't start the conversation. And so many times, behavior change starts with a conversation. It's around creating that awareness. I always say people may not change now, but in a week's time, you've planted a little seed in terms of, why don't you do this? Why don't you try this? And somehow you influence change. And I always say, when you influence change with one person, it actually affects 7 people around them. Because that mindset that actually, so thank you very much. That's really, really valuable in terms of your. Is there anybody else that would like to? Shakira?
Thank you so much, Imna. So for me, the arts and the creative space is very important, and it's a big part of my life and who I am. And so we would really like to use the arts and the creative industry and the natural talent that a lot of people in our communities have to try and create financial opportunities for them. Because you find that, there are many people who are already graffitiing, on the side of the road, or already dancing with their friends for fun, or singing in the shower. And you can actually use that to create financial opportunity for yourself. But for me, and I love what the person before me said about the mindset shift. So what we really try to do is to try and get these artists to see the opportunities around them, so that they can realize that, okay, my graffitiing is not just something that I do. It's actually something that can make money for me. I'm unemployed. I'm really good at this. I enjoy spray painting. How can I turn this into a financial opportunity? So that's what we really try to do.
Absolutely. And I think as organizations coming together, and so you find that, I always say this, NGOs, CBOs, they like working in isolation. And so it's something that as a developmental work, I always say, and Ted and myself always chat about, is that this notion that it's mine and I own it. And so the community takes that on. That if I speak to that organization, I'm not allowed to speak to this organization. And this important part around participation amongst NGOs that should be taking place. And so for yours example is creating this opportunity. So are you speaking to the schools? Because the schools actually know the kids that are really talented. And where does that lead to? And so it's important that that notion of collaboration should start. And that's how you get participation. That we all have this common vision. I always say this, in a community, you're all supposed to have one vision, because it's about creating positive change for your community, and so that takes the shift in the community around. So I actually can make a difference here. It means something when I actually do a mural in my community. There's people watching it, they're looking at it. It somehow gives this upliftment in my community, that it's not a blank wall I look at. This is representative of my community. So that's really, really amazing, Shakira. It's valuable, and it takes this mental shift for community members as well.
Am I allowed to make a comment?
Yes, of course you can make a comment.
Thank you. No, I'm just thinking because of what you said about organizations working in silos, and it just got me thinking, because Leanne, who spoke before me, was saying that she would like to help people start businesses from their homes. And what you said also, my mind is kind of just racing, and I'm thinking, So let's say, for example, Leanne's organization and mine were to work together.
Absolutely.
Often people would think, okay, well, they're not in the art space, so I can't work with them because I'm in the art space. But what if her business owners need graphic design or need something done? You know, there's that kind of collaboration. So sorry, I just want to
Absolutely.
share
No, but it's
that.
exactly those conversations that are really, really important. I think we work in isolation, and so us just having such an engagement, communities immediately click. Okay. Yes, gentlemen.
Fine. Yeah, my name is Jabulani. So my vision is a fight against gender-based violence. So that I would want to see in my community.
Wow.
So I think that fight, we are ignoring much. I think we are ignoring the gender-based violence. We're not doing much except just watching the president say something. So I would want to make use of the social media platforms to encourage, I think, I don't know her name, she used the word influence.
Yeah.
And then she said there's a difference between impacting the community and being an influence. I'm still trying to think what is the difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm still trying to think. So that's what I want to do, gender-based violence, just the end of it. I think we can, especially men, if we take part in the discussions around the community, not only discussing, but doing something about it.
Wow, and it's something, 60 days of activism started now, and it's so scary because this morning and over the past few days, I've heard about women that have been violated over the past few days, and whether it is in your workspace, whether it's at home, and we still find this dynamic that people sit and they watch it.
Yes,
and so you say something so important when you said we wait and we sit and we watch the president speak about GBV, gender-based violence. And so what am I doing? And I always say this, you know, and I challenge my male friends, I challenge my brothers, and I say, so if you see that, what is your responsibility as a male? But what is my responsibility as a female as well?
Yes.
And so we always focus on the males, but it's the same thing. Am I sitting back and watch my colleague Taryn being beaten up? What am I also doing about it? Because by me keeping quiet, I'm also becoming part of this problem.
Yes, that's true.
And I always say, you know, when one person speaks up, you'll find 10 other people will start speaking up in the community. And I think that's the responsibility and the change that we want to see. And the influence.
Yes, influence.
The actual influence that happens.
I would want to know what is the definition of influence.
And I think when Taryn comes up again, we will go back to that and look at that actual definition of
thank you.
it. Thank you very much. Thank you. So I think just in terms of kind of just rounding it off, so what would actually happen if you achieve this vision in your community? What do you think? You all spoke beautifully around what you want to achieve, your vision. What's going to happen in your community if this is actually achieved? Yeah.
So if I achieve my vision of creating accessible or free healthcare, it would definitely achieve an awareness campaign which was successful. So individuals understanding that they have access to this. It will also ensure that we have a healthier community. It will also drop levels of, AIDS and, diseases. I mean, now we're sitting in a space where, COVID-19 is so prevalent and it's just spreading all the time. So right now, I think all that South Africa is looking for is a healthier population and, to conserve our population.
Absolutely, and so there's it. She just said it. Healthier communities. That's ultimately what you want to achieve. And for me, healthier communities is it the physical well-being? It's all about mental well-being as well. It's this holistic look of what your community should be looking like.
Exactly.
Because at the moment we're not seeing that.
Yes.
And so that's really, really a great achievement if we look at a community. Thank you.
Thank you.
So if I achieve my vision, like I said before, I think it will all start with that mindset change. But I think that will start a ripple effect in the community. So maybe it's a mom who's been unemployed and starts her own thing. She will then, what's the word I'm looking for? She will inevitably place that mindset onto a child to
Yes.
say that you don't have to stay in this
Influence a child.
She would influence
Yeah,
a child
yeah.
to say you don't have to stay in this mindset or in this type of community where you just like live with what's around you, but you can actually start your own thing. So I think it will start at ripple effects like all around.
Absolutely, and I think also that it starts I always say that women and as mothers, you influence your child's behavior, you influence how your child visualizes, and I always say, nowadays you speak to teenagers, they have no dreams. And so where's that dream coming from? The dream comes from the people that's in the community. It's about the auntie that's next door that's speaking to this little child saying, you can be more than this. And I believe in you and you can achieve this and let's do it together. And so it's exactly that ripple effect. Yeah. And also for other mothers, for them looking at, so I also have a skill here. Maybe I see she's successful, she's creating this change for herself. Maybe I should also try something. And so sharing that as well as a community member. Great, brilliant. Thanks so much. Yeah, Shakira.
Thank you. Wow, you're making us think a lot, eh?
Yeah, Friday afternoon thinking.
So, I think for me, can you just repeat the question so I can
And so when you achieve this vision, so we spoke broadly around your vision and kind of the change that you'd like to see in your community. If you really achieve that, how do you think the community is going to look like after that? What's going to be? What do you visualize? What's that change going to be?
I think it will... Even though we are trying to train people to create or to notice opportunity within the arts sector, I think it will have a ripple effect and people will be able to start recognizing opportunity even in other spaces and having those conversations amongst themselves. And so similar to again, what Leanne spoke about is that mindset shift that's really important. But I think also people will have more financial opportunities because they'll be able to create that for themselves. And I mean, financial opportunities have a lot of other ripple effects.
Absolutely.
And then I think also just bring a sense of lightness and happiness because art has the tendency to do that.
Absolutely.
And to just help people feel a little bit better and to give them a creative expression and maybe even start many other conversations around gender-based violence or medicine because, again, art has the capabilities to do that.
This messaging that goes out to your community. Absolutely.
So definitely the financial opportunities and then just making the world a little bit lighter and happier.
A brighter space to be in. And I want to point out something very important. So all of you spoke about causes. And so Shakira spoke about the impact of what art can create for individuals in your communities. And so you're all organizations working in the same community. Let's say that's the scenario. And so how do you use art to actually influence your change that you want to create in communities? And so, for example, you're focusing on health and nutrition, healthy communities. And so art is an amazing way of how you can actually create that space. And so I always say when I walk into a community and I see artwork, I see a mural, this community is all bright, and it actually does lift you up. It makes you see, wow, this community is actually taking responsibility for what's currently happening in their community. And it's about mobilizing that. So thank you very much, Shakira, for that. Thanks so much. Are we moving on to our next? Okay, so what would happen in your community if you don't achieve your vision? So the not so bright side. So now you've tried and you have this vision in mind, and this vision is it's just not coming.
Yes.
It's not fruitful at all. Yes. So what do you think is going to happen to that community?
I think elements of our community at the moment we can see, if we talk about drug addiction, if we talk about teenage pregnancy and the like, we see a lack of well-being of, you see a society in a state of depression, and factors like art, health, etc. is what's needed. So I'm going back to your previous question, is where we'll see an overall upliftment of young people. And remember, it's young people that must contribute to this economy. And if we're not mentally healthy, physically healthy, we won't be able to produce. And the lack of that is a deeper state of where we currently find. It's sad, it's depressing, but it's true. So a lack of youth coming together, challenging the issues that we face, gangsterism and the like, we'll just sit in a deeper crisis, and I don't want to see the next 5 years looking like the last 5 years. Yeah.
And so it really speaks to how do I become an active citizen in my community? And so I always ask this question around, so I decide to sit back and I don't participate, I don't engage. And so you're literally watching your community just like decrease.
And deteriorate.
And so those pictures we looked at earlier, for me, I looked at that and I was like, it's the same community. In the one community, people just don't care. This is just it. This is how we live. We've accepted this way of. And then in the other community, it was about people taking responsibility. I'm actually going to clean up my community now. Let's create a communal space where we can all hang our washing up. But it's neat, it's clean, the environment is conducive for our little children running around, because some things we don't control.
Absolutely.
And it's exactly what you're saying there, but how do we then create that change? Because it is an holistic viewpoint of how we look at our community and us as individuals. Thank you so much. Thank you. Influencer.
Yes, influencer, yes. So the question is, if we don't
if you
do
don't
anything,
achieve, if you don't achieve your vision that we spoke about.
Yeah, so gender-based violence, I don't have a citation with me, but if left unattended, I think it's going to influence the children, the victims, not only the victims, but the children, the family structure. We had was it a workshop or something earlier about the family structure? Yeah. So if gender-based, if we ignore it, I think it's going to destroy the community, even from the families and the way that we interact, even the people that are involved, like what you mentioned earlier, that sometimes as friends and family, we defend our friends.
Yes.
That, okay, no, not my friend, you cannot do that.
Yeah.
And then we discuss gender-based violence and don't do anything about it.
We don't do anything. We don't action it.
Yes. Yeah. School is going to get into schools, families, and then the whole community is going to be affected. And then also mental health. So usually and mostly the victims, they suffer from depression, anxiety. I don't want to be in an environment whereby can I say females or women?
Yeah. Yes,
women,
females,
okay.
women.
Okay, but
same thing.
No, it's not. Okay, but fine. Females, women, whereby they are scared of us. Whereby if I'm in the same maybe room with you, you think that I'm going to do something to you, of which I don't think.
You don't feel safe.
Okay. Yes.
That they don't feel safe in a space with.
Yes. We want everyone to be safe in the communities. That's what I think.
And I think so valuable what he's saying there is that once again it's that, how do I take action? What do I do? And it's asking yourself, what's my responsibility? And it's those important conversations that must start happening, because we always think about what's the next person going to do, and then I just sit comfortably over here. And so important, how do we challenge our friends? How do we take that further for ourselves to create a better society?
We all have to be influencers.
Influencers. There we go. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. We have our last young lady.
So, if we don't reach the vision of providing free or accessible healthcare to individuals, we'll be sitting with an unhealthy community and eventually an unhealthy nation. And if individuals aren't healthy, they're less productive. They're unable to get to schools, to become educated. They're unable to, go to work, to earn a living. It has a ripple effect. Yeah. And eventually it starts affecting our economy. And once our economy starts getting hit, one thing leads to another. And as you mentioned earlier, one of your points is we're trying to build our community.
Absolutely.
And at this point, it looks like, if we don't ensure that we provide the correct health care, or at least measures in place where people can afford to get the healthcare that they need, what's going to end up happening is just going to deteriorate. And individuals are going to find themselves in, worse economic situations, and it leads to degradations of communities as a whole.
Absolutely. And so we currently see that with COVID-19. I mean, we all came in here and we were a bit paranoid about the masks, and we're all aware of the second wave that's happening. And so life is going on as normal. We're trying to go back to normality, and it's not there yet. But we all take responsibility in terms of my own health. And so you standing up here with a mask, because I don't have a mask and we're not in close. But it's a typical example of how we all influence a change. And so it boils down to the individual and how you're going to create that change within yourself.
Correct.
Because you impact everybody around you. So very, very valuable.
And you need to take responsibility for your actions.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you very much. And so I'd like to hand over to Taryn. There was such a meaningful kind of engagement between us. And I think I just asked really important questions and it got people really thinking around what's your responsibility as an individual? How do I influence that change? And how do I influence the community overall? And so that's kind of the ripple effect around how do you become an active citizen. And so for us, it's about that. It's about creating that justice within your community. And so if you decide to sit back, the community is going to all have the same attitude. And somehow, if you're a group and you mobilize, start speaking to your different organizations in that area. There's a lot of faith-based organizations that's currently doing a lot of work. There's soup kitchens happening. How do you then engage that? How does your NGO work with that NGO? And you create a bigger change. I always say when you work together, you become stronger. And as a community, you influence change like that. So thank you so much. I think give yourselves a round of applause. I'd like to hand over to Taryn now. And Taryn's just going to take us into another session in terms of where do we go from here? What are we currently sitting with right now within our communities? How do we become more active? Thanks,
Let's give Yumna a hand. So don't go too far, Yumna. I'm going to need you up soon. I want to encourage the audience at home or where you are at the office to engage. If you can't do it now with us, write it down. I think for us as an organization, as an academy, working specifically with grassroots organizations, we have realized that there is a resetting needing to happen. Do you agree with me? There's a resetting that needs to happen. There is a resetting that is happening where NGOs are looking at themselves and thinking, what are we doing? COVID-19 has not made anything worse. No, let me say this. COVID-19 has not introduced anything new. Health, youth development. The gentleman here said GBV. When the lockdown was announced in June, GBV heightened by 500%. So no, COVID-19 didn't introduce anything new. It exacerbated what was there. It was a boiling point. It's there. So yes, we're doing amazing things, and I love all of your vision. But somehow, somewhere, and our CEO loves to say this, is that if we're not affecting change, then we might as well close the doors. Is that harsh? I think COVID-19 has communicated strongly that we are in a mess that has been there for the last 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And if we don't respond to this mess, come next COVID-19, the situation is going to get much worse. So I'm going to ask you a question, and I would have liked Yumna to come up and show this. Oh, here she is. I wanted to show this to you. There's a juncture now. So you've got your vision, and the vision is implemented. You are participating in the effect you want to see in your community. But now you've got to pause. Is it Jabulani? Give Jabulani a hand. Can we give him a hand? I think when a brother starts standing up for GBV causes, it makes me excited. There's a juncture that's happening. We're there. And we have to ask ourselves the question, where are we between your vision, impacting your vision out there, it being realized and it not being realized yet? Because if your vision is working, July of 2020, no one was supposed to be hanging from a tree, Jabulani. No one is supposed to be killed at a post office. No child is supposed to be at the back in a Wendy house, not having access to water. So we now need to ask ourselves, are we there? Especially when we're doing restructuring now as organizations, we're reflecting, what are we actually doing the things we're doing, are they affecting change? Not there yet. I actually don't know. We're getting there, or we're almost there. So thank you, Yumna. Thank you so much. One of the things that we spoke of yesterday in our strategic workshop with our exec, and they used the word very blatant, the BS word. It's now time for us to stop the BS and get on to what really matters. Can I say that again? It's time for us collectively as community members, as organizations, as civil leaders, as NGO leaders, spiritual leaders, to stop the BS and put everything aside, because something needs to happen. Can you give me a hand? So the next part is it okay if I sit right here? The next part I want to go through with you is a reflection. How can we improve what we do? Because I think this is the questions now we need to ask ourselves as NGOs. How can we improve what we do? So one thing that we speak about in one of our courses that we do is you need to understand the subject matter intelligently. So everyone says they're doing youth development. But what do you know, Oscar, about youth development? What do you know about youth that is not in education, in employment, and in skills training? What do you know about, people say they do early childhood development. What do you know about the ECD space at the moment? Do you know that there's still 50% of our country's children that do not have access to early childhood development? And that's not ECD centers only. Any ECD type of learning. And the children that's most affected is the poor children. It's the children from Khayelitsha. It's the children from Manenberg and Langa. It's the children in the Northern Cape on the rural outskirts. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, and you don't have to answer me. So what do you actually know about gender-based violence? So everyone wants to do gender-based violence. What is gender-based violence? What do you know about food security and food insecurity? Everyone's starting a soup kitchen. I remember some years back when government gave money for nutrition centers. In one road, we had 20 soup kitchens. Does it make any sense if everyone starts having a soup kitchen? And so when we speak about community participation, it's really understanding the needs in your community, understanding the subject matter, and then how you effect change through your vision. So Oscar, what do you know about youth needs? We spoke about that. And then what do you know about substance abuse? 10 years ago when we did a study in Athlone, the 3 drugs of choice were stuck: heroin, then it was called unga. I don't know what the street name is now. And alcohol. It's still a fundamental social problem across communities, whether you're black, whether you deem yourself other or white. And then gangsterism and the gang culture. So when you're doing youth development, you need to understand the one thing in our communities, specifically in the Cape Flats, is the gang culture, where it comes from, why it's there, because if you don't know why it's there, you can't solve it. So many of us we address the pathologies. What is it about gangsterism that is attracting our youth? So in 2010, I worked in a community called Bokmakiri. Anyone know where Bokmakiri is? So Bokmakiri is in Athlone, opposite the CBD, in the CBD, next to Q-Town, off the N2. So it's probably like 10 minutes away from the city. In that small community that you can run through within 6 minutes, there was 10 different types of gangs in that small community. And Bokmakiri is but one of many communities that have this issue. So one of the issues was there was a boy as young as 9 years old, Yumna, that was in a gang. So this 9-year-old boy was supposed to be at school. This 9-year-old boy is supposed to be looked after by his parents. But something in Bokmakiri is fundamentally wrong, that he now finds himself in a gang. Can I keep going? You can. Yes. So what do you know about early childhood development? I said that before we even come to youth development, before we shout fees must fall, which I'm a real advocate for, it started early childhood development it is there where we are getting it significantly, profoundly wrong when our children reach grade 4. So grade 4 would be standard 6? Am I correct? Standard 2. So when they reach standard 2, many of our children cannot read for meaning. They cannot understand when they have read something. So already there, this child now gets passed on, and then we sit with the pathology in high school. So they either drop out, they start showing deviant behavior because something was not addressed in the early childhood development years. So what do you know about the housing issue in your community? That is something that you're wanting to address. And do you know that the housing issue affects youth development? The housing issue affects the health care. The housing issue affects employment. If you're wanting to Leanne, start a hairdresser for young teenage or young mothers, if they don't have their own space, it's going to be very, very difficult for them to start anything in terms of sustainable livelihoods. And what do you know about TB? Do you know that it's actually the fastest, it's the biggest killer in our country? And many of us, we move away from it, but there's so little money going into the TB pandemic. And what do you know about the skills capacity in your community? So you're wanting to start something with youth, you're wanting to start something with young people. What do you know about these skills? Have you ever done a community profile, a household profile? So I'm taking you through this because I'm wanting you to understand that before you do any type of work in your community, you need to understand what the problem is. Before you get to the how, you've got to understand the subject matter. When someone says to you substance abuse, you've got to understand what they mean when they say substance abuse, from an international level to a national level, to what it means for Manenberg, for what it means for Atlantis, what it means for Gugulethu, before you even think of your involvement. Are you with me? Yes. So my last comment around this, understanding the subject matter, is what you know, Jabulani, impacts how you respond. Can I say that again? What you know impacts how you're going to respond. So how can we improve what we do? What do you know about the problem? And I'm going to swing through this very quickly. Globally, historically, you've got to know the history of your community. You've got to know when you step into Langa, why Langa is so overpopulated. That Langa was the first black township after the Group Areas Act, and people were forcibly removed. It was the first black township, and that's how Gugulethu came about, and that's why Kailicha came about. And so when you're looking at Langa, you've got to look at it in its historical form and traditional form. And we, of course, know that Brenda Fuss is from Langa. So the poverty index is it's worse right now. But 2 years ago, 13.8 million people was living below the poverty line. I don't know what COVID has done. I don't know, it's probably, I don't know how much more. But according to the UN, what the poverty line really means is 531 Rand a month per person per household. So if you live, so each one in the household must have 531. If you're a house of 4, it comes to just over 2,000. When I worked in Bokmakiri, the average house had a income of 1/8, and guess how that 1/8 was made up of? Social grants. What does that tell us about unemployment? What does that tell us about the education of the people that we're working with? And if you look at 531 Rand, I'm sure some of you are spending that a week on electricity. And some of our people, our neighbors in our country, is living on that. Some 2 years ago, it's obviously much more now, is that if you want to start anything around poverty and poverty alleviation and job placements or opportunities, there's 17.5 people that is living on social security grants from SASSA. There's a huge fraction of our youth, Oscar, that are living on CSG grants, our young people. There's something wrong. So the third quarter, 2 weeks ago, the third quarter stats came out, Stats SA. They told us that we have 11 million South Africans that is now unemployed because of COVID. What is more sad for me, Oscar, and someone that is a change pioneer in Atlantis, is that 60% of that cohort is youth. 30% of them are graduates. So in 2018, I said it earlier, there was a housing national backlog of 2.1 million. The city of Cape Town, 300,000. Now that's nowhere correct, because you are only identified as being without a house, homeless, if you don't have a structure, a plot. But if you're going into Manenberg, you'll see that there's 7, 8 shacks in the back. They're not counted. We have a serious housing issue. I'm wanting to encourage us to understand our subject matter, because the subject matter is going to, I think it's because often not a lot of us know what we're doing. Not a lot of us know why we're doing it. We know how to do it, but we don't know why we're doing it. So the how gets lost. Is julle nog met my? So C, I spoke about the subject matter. I spoke about what you know about the problem. And then the C, it's time communities start understanding the subject matter and using data to inform their projects, your causes, and your action. You need to understand the healthcare system. You need to understand why still so many people post-1994 do not have access to quality healthcare. And then how are we going to use the data that we have? Because it's all well and good, people sit with data. Academics love data. It's what they do. But the data needs to mean something. How do we use this data to prove change? Tangible change that can be measured. And when I say tangible, it's either a decrease or an increase. So I'm going to quickly go over some, because you guys look very tired. So in 2017, in the Western Cape, we had a very serious problem. It's ongoing. Just over 200 children was brutally murdered. 90% by someone that they know. That was in 2017. One of them was Courtney Peters. She formed part of that. So it was either by the neighbor, it was by her uncle, it was by the landlord, it was through gangsterism. Many of them were boys. So the work that you're doing now in your communities, it needs to, the effect that we're wanting to see, that you're wanting to see, should be to decrease child murder in the Western Cape. And then you're going to speak about how you're going to do that. And when you want to pat yourself on the shoulder, you're going to say, you're going to give stats. Usually you can say in Atlantis around December time, there are so many accidents or incidents of child murder or abuse, but through your program, it actually decreased by 10%, and you checked with SAPS and you checked with social development. Through your work, so this is the type of things that you need to speak about when you're doing community work. There was a 50% increase in children attending early childhood development and learning in Manenberg, for example. Housing, 20 out of the 2,000 people in Delft received social housing in 2020, and that could be because of what you did. So this is a tangible change that you're going to report on if you're successfully doing what you are called to do. So when we speak about soup kitchens and we speak about feeding people, there's absolutely a need for that. There should never be this debate about is it necessary. It's absolutely necessary. The president said feeding people comes out of our humanity. So there's always going to be an auntie in the soup kitchen. But then we speak about the development space that we're in a Nova Park one. When I just started, there was 3-4 generations of one family in that soup kitchen. Grandmother, daughter, and the grandchildren. We cannot be feeding the same people year in and year out. So Jabulani, there must be a decrease in the number of GBV cases in the first quarter of 2021 due to the increase that you've done in prevention work. whether it's in Mitchells Plain or Khayelitsha. There must be a decrease in community violence and crime between 7 o'clock and 4 o'clock in the morning in Lavendale because of this new walking pass for children. And then lastly, another way of measuring the work that we do. There's a decrease in crime in Wallisdean in October 2020 simply because of the street lights that was advocated by this organization from Shakira. You see where I'm going with this? So the one thing that I want to say when we look at all of this and all of the things that we're doing, I mean, we've got some comments on social media about the amazing work our communities are doing. The one thing that I want to say in terms of reflection is that we need deeper collaboration amongst NGOs. Our biggest efforts is to ensure that we collaborate. So one quickly, I'm going to take you through this reflection. Our work matters. Can you say that? No, I think you can do better than that. Our work matters. Our work matters. Our vision matters. Our vision matters. So you can stop now. So your work matter. And I want to say this because now it was really like, when you look at me, oh, Taryn, what are you saying now? Am I catching on gemors? No. I think part of this resetting for organizations and increasing community agency and participation is that we stop and we reflect and we see, are we there yet and are we going to get there? So one, our work matters, your vision matters, your work matters. Then I want to say this, and I want to be very, very bold. You don't know what you don't know. It's as simple as that. And if you don't know, it's time you start knowing. If you don't know what's happening in your community, it's time you get up from your seat and stop complaining about a recreation hall, because actually you got 40 churches in that community that was closed in lockdown that could have kept homeless people and could have fed those thousands of children. But our vision must form part of the overall vision for the community. There's got to be a collective approach. So one, for each social issue that you respond to, it must form part of our national development plan. So what does the NDP say about it? What does the sustainable goals say about it? What does your local municipality's IDP say about it? Is there a strategy for Atlantis, a community development working group? Is there one for Kayamandi? What do we wanting to achieve as a community? And then how does each of our organizations fit into that? And for that, we need collaboration. It demands collaboration that leads to authentic community participation. And that cancels out our need. There's an innate need for NGOs to compete. If we understand the work that needs to be done, there's no time for competition. If we saw all the children that was hungry during COVID, we can't compete. We've got to share pots. We've got to share gas stoves. And then there must be collective action and individual commitment. A community participation that fosters ownership and empowerment. Because when everyone participates, they own it, it's theirs, and then they feel empowered. And so active citizenship as reclaiming our active citizenship, as Cornerstone puts it, it's undergirded by a profound level of compassion. All of what we do is evoked by that thing, whether you believe in God or not, that comes from here. The silver bullet is this compassion must lead to meaningful change. A change that speaks of impact and influence. So I'm going to do my last one, and I'm going to call Yumna up. So we're gonna start concluding, but I want to show the audience this. It's also my response to Jabulani. So it's the last one in terms of the reflection. Community participation in all its efforts must lead to change that is impactful, but above all, it must influence structural change that impacts policy, institutions, and processes. So yes, we can address GBV, but if all the noise we're making is not looking at the structural systemic issues of that pathology, GBV, because GBV is just a symptom of the bigger picture. If we don't do that, we might as well close our doors. And I'm going to say this again to differentiate between impact and influence. Community participation in all of its efforts must lead to change that is impactful. Above all, it must influence structural and systemic change that impacts the policy around our issues, the institutions that keep our people in a perpetual cycle of poverty, and lastly, all of these processes that add on to that. Impact from a space of impact to a state of influence. Are you with me? I think you're not going to have a seat on the stage. Is there any, I thought maybe we could just, before I close, is there anyone that want to say something? You all seem very quiet. We have one participant that really wants to. So it's just popping up thinking, so I've sat here now, I'm over here for an hour. What is some of the things that has come to your mind when you this community participation linked to your vision? So we have Shakira.
Firstly, I just want to say thank you so much for this workshop and just for everything that we've learned today. Taryn, you kind of touched on what my question was when you said that compassion is what leads to meaningful change. And I know you said that there's no time for competition when there's work to be done, and I completely agree with you. And I think my question is, how do we deal with the human element when it comes to that kind of thing? Because, and maybe this comes from the top down, you know, because I feel like in South Africa we've got this culture of people not doing things because they're passionate about it or it means something to them, but doing it because it's a job, or doing something because starting an NGO is an easy way to get a grant or a tender or to make money or, you know, or to gain popularity in my community. And so my question is, how do NGOs deal with that? Deal with, firstly, the different personalities and people competing with each other and having selfish interests, and then how do we get rid of this culture of doing something just because, you know? Yeah, thank you.
I'm sure she wants to respond, but I'm going to say quickly. So I left a previous organization because I felt deeply inside that this was not about the people. And so you would sit there and you would see how we would showcase the poverty of people for the sake of money. And they call it poverty porn. There's one statement I read one day by someone who says, so for who shall I perform my poverty today? Because that is how poor people feel. And some use it because they have to, and some have been accustomed to it. I left. There's people, NGOs, that has been around for many years and they're never going to change. The best you can do as your organization is to ensure that when you collaborate with people who share your vision, your common goal, and then lastly, your values. If they don't, close the door. In the same breath with funders. If funders do not share your fundamentals, if they don't share the fact that you're not going to take a picture while you're feeding people because it degrades the humanity of your beneficiaries, you don't take that money. It's up to you. But that's the stance that we have made as an organization. And it's also a personal value of mine. I don't do that. Does it answer you? You've got a mic, sorry.
So I think you say something so valuable, because I think we sometimes are our worst enemies as individuals working in this field of social development. And so I want to reiterate what Taryn said, that it's what's in your heart. And I always say, you know, as a social worker, I sit here and there's a reflection process that takes place with me all the time. What I'm doing, does it speak to my values and my heart? And at some point, you need to make that decision, this is not good for me no longer. this is not good for myself, for my organization, and where do I want to go to next? And so I think it's a common thing. Fights happen in organizations all the time, not within your organization, but other organizations as well. And so it's a conflict that takes place all the time, but it must be spoken about. And so I always say this process of we own this, there's no such thing as ownership. And I think this process of what's the reason that the organization started? And I always take you back to that basics, because it belongs to nobody. An NGO belongs to the community. And so to the people, for the people. And so I want to leave you with that. And if there's people in your community that's working against what your values are within that community, they must be challenged. The question must be asked, because if you leave it, it only spirals out of control. And so I always go back to what's in that individual's heart, what's in my heart. And it's about taking responsibility for yourself and asking yourself that question all the time.
And I think, Yumna, some years back when I just started in Raw as a development practitioner in Nova Park, so there would be someone who would come to a community meeting and they look at the agenda, they're like, not for me, and they would leave. And it's that type of people that you don't want to be, you don't actually need them in your space. You've got to make a decision that I will work with the people who wants to help. You don't have to, I know we have some aunties that love to complain. Even in our workspace, within teamwork in an organizational level, everyone has something to bring. And if you don't appreciate that, then you cannot work with people like that. Okay. So we have an online question.
I'm just going to ask a question on behalf of the online person. It was about the data. You said, referring back to data, the question was around the fact that data comes from research, and research costs money, and NGOs don't have money. So how is a small NGO operating in a community? Do you combat that or prove the value of your work?
And I think that's a good question. I think that research starts, community research starts in the community. It's raw. So I know lots of students, they love coming out from from university. It's what I did with Bokmakiri. I was a third final year student, and I came to do research within Bokmakiri. But I think one thing that you need to do is local research is important. And often the people that have money that research, they don't get to the grassroots information. The information that sits with the clinics, information that sits with the schools, so community mapping at its very lowest level. And I think what we need to do is and get in touch with Community Chest. It's something that we teach in our program. The grassroots research that must happen from organizations. In fact, let me say this to the organizations: we go to you for research, because you know the answers, and that is why I think we want to strengthen agency, because we're saying the resources are in the community, the history is in the community. If you ask someone, how many schools do you have? I'm not going to know it offhand, but before you go in, you need to know it, and the best person that's going to give you that is the Rashanda Pascoe of Mannenberg. It's going to be Lucinda in Lavender Hill. It's going to be the people, they know it. And often what we do with research is we undermine local knowledge. It's there, and for the things that you don't know, you go to your government departments, you go to social development, and you ask them, so what has been the intake this quarter for substance abuse? Because I'm doing a project and I want to see if it speaks to that. Do you want to add?
I think just it's about mobilizing what's currently in your community. And so I always say your police station, they know everything that's happening. And it's a random talk with one of the police officers that go around in the community. And so for me, it's not always your formalized research, and it's your grassroots. What's actually happening there? It's that question that you must ask. And so there's important people in your communities that can answer you. It's that auntie that lives on the corner that knows everything about the community. And believe me, she'll be able to tell you all the soup kitchens. She'll be able to tell you which children come to that soup kitchen, what's happening in that household. Those are the important things that inform you as a community development worker. So definitely spot, and it's that raw research that we need to start activating and accessing within our communities.
And if you don't know, we have NGOs within Capricorn. What was it called? Vrygrond. That actually a very grassroots organization that has a partner with an academic institution, start having partnerships with the Cornerstone Institute and say, we've got an organization, do you have third-year students who wants to come and do research? They can come and help us. Those are practical ways, but I think it's always good to ask, because there are students that's really looking at doing what they do. That wants to do that. The one thing that I wanted to say in response to Shakira's question also, when we do project management and there's these issues, if it doesn't affect the project, then it's okay. You don't want to have it, so we're not going to do the soup kitchen at Brother Edgar's house because I have an issue. No, get over your issue. It's about the project. If you can't be in this lane, then it's time for you to actually leave. Okay. So I'm going to end with two quotes. I'm a quote person, Yumna knows. So it's just a reflection on today. And I think I wanted to start it in the beginning, where Alice Hawker says, look closely at the present that you are constructing. It should look like the future you are dreaming. Can I say that again? Look closely at the present you are constructing. It should look like the future you are dreaming. And then one more quote. It's a community development quote that we learned in some years at Cornerstone years ago. And I think it's the basis for development work. It's the basis for community work and community participation. And I love saying it, and I can say it off heart. It says, go to the people, live with them, learn from them, and love them. Start with what they know and build with what they have. But with the best of leaders, community development workers, community leaders, pastors, youth development workers, with the best of these leaders, when the work is done and the task is accomplished, the people will say, oh, we have done this ourselves. Thank you very much. You've been an awesome
Thank you so
audience.
much.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Community Chest. Thank you for the way in which the workshop unfolded, the interactive nature of the workshop. It was just excellent. And thank you to all participants for the inputs that you gave and the engaging way that you responded to the questions and the call for participation from Community Chest. I'm left at the end of this session with stop the BS. Stop the BS. Let us collaborate. Let us have partnerships. Let us know the history of our communities that we're working in. Let us know what the issues are and do research on it. And engaging research, participative research, involve the community so that ownership of the issue and responding to the issue rests with the community, not with me as an individual or with the organization. So at Cornerstone, we learn to change the world. Through this workshop, we influence to change the world, and we take action collectively, collaboratively, in partnership to change the world. Thank you, Community Chest.